You know, we teach a course on values at Values Coach called the 12 Core Action Values. Core Action Value number 10 is enthusiasm. Can we try that again? Good morning.
Good morning.
That was what I expected from you guys. Good morning. I want to tell you how you guys got your latest fan, and that's me, last night. I got here, I have a colleague, my director of client services at Values Coach. 10 days ago, she took a spill on her bike. I have been very unhappy with the care that she's not receiving for her shoulder injury. Turns out she has a break and there's something wrong with the muscle. I don't understand it. Last night, I got here at the reception, and by the time I left, I had talked to 6 different people who are in this room right now, every one of whom said, oh, we can help you with that. I know who she needs to go talk to. And, you know, I'll fly her to Timbuktu if that's what it takes. But she's not getting the care she needs now, and I could not have been more impressed. And I knew I would be from having learned about your company. But I want to tell you, the things that David was talking about, that's what I felt last night. And it's very impressive. But before I start today, can I tell you about my daughter, Annie?
Yeah, sure.
4 of you want to hear, so the rest of you don't have a choice. This is my daughter, Annie. We're very proud of Annie. She is working on her PhD in neurobiology research. I do not have a clue what she's talking about half the time. But Annie is one of those kids who just charges through life. And from the day she was born, she has been going 180 miles an hour. Just bang, bang, bang. And when Annie was a little tyke, about 18 months old, we went to visit my wife's parents. You know, the visit to the grandparents. And Annie, of course, is racing around this new house, exploring, tearing things apart, ripping into things. And she comes charging in through the living room, 180 miles an hour, and Grandpa's in there. Now, Grandpa is an outdoorsman. He spends a lot of time on his boat, so he's very tan. He is also as bald as a cue ball. And he's sitting there in his reading chair, got on these little square Ben Franklin reading glasses, book in his lap, and he comes charging in 180 miles an hour, pigtails flopping up and down. She runs smack dab into Grandpa, stops dead cold in her tracks. Her eyes pop open, her jaw drops down, and she just stares. Any parents in the room? So you know how inquisitive a toddler can be, don't you? And you know how honest a toddler can be. And she stares and stares. Then she laughs, looks over at Grandma and says, Grandma, I have a Mr. Potato Head too. And isn't it true that you and I can both look at a third person and think we see somebody totally different, based on the most superficial of things? The costume they happen to wear to work, the car they drive, whether they're in a wheelchair or not, the way they talk. Doesn't that happen all the time? It is not right, it is not fair, but it is human nature. And you know, in our experience, in my experience, I'm a recovering hospital administrator. No organization is more hierarchical, more status conscious than a hospital. And everybody knows who's at the top of the chart. Guys in the white suits and the white blue suits and the white lab coats, and everybody knows who's at the bottom. And we have this clearly defined status hierarchy. And part of living your values is biting that inner mental tongue that wants to judge other people on the basis of the most superficial things. Isn't it true? You and I can both look at the same situation and see something completely different. I mean, the economy is what it is. Whether you think it's the best of times or the worst of times depends on where you're coming from. You talk to any trial lawyer and they will tell you if 6 people see a car accident, it's 6 different accidents. Wait a week and it's 12. And in the work we do at Values Coach, one of the most inspiring but also heartbreaking things that I experience all the time is I meet incredible people. I meet people who have so much to offer. They have talent, they have passion, they're good at what they do, they're proud of what they do, and yet as I get to know them, as I get to talk to them about their values, I know they get up in the morning, they look in the mirror, and they see Mr. or Mrs. Potato Head looking back at them. They have been listening to that little voice in the back of their head for so long that says, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, you can't, you won't, that it has become part of their self-identity. They have crawled into those words the way a hermit crab crawls into a shell, and it has become their world, the assumptions they make, And they cheat themselves by settling for anemic dreams and goals because they have become convinced that they're not capable, that they don't deserve more. And a big part of the leadership challenge, isn't it, is trying to get people to get out of those self-imposed shells and learn to grow. I saw this picture on the internet. What a great metaphor. Because not only do people look in the mirror and pretend to see less than what's really there, and our challenge is to get them to see that potential, to get them to see not just who's there now, but who could I be? Who could I be if I didn't let fear stop me from making the phone calls, from going back to school, from writing the book or starting the business? Who could I be if I opened that cage door that doesn't have a lock on it, that's been holding me back for so long? Who could I be if I didn't listen to that little voice telling me I'm not good enough, smart enough, pretty enough? Who could I be if I learned how to rewrite that negative inner dialogue to be more positive, more constructive, and frankly, more truthful? Who could I be if I were really living my values? And you know, the truth is, I hear people say, are you telling me I don't have values? And I always say, yeah. You don't have values. Values is not a noun. You don't possess values. You live values. You practice values. And nobody ever, the day you think you got values licked, you don't got to work on it anymore because I got values. There's actually a word for that. Enron. I love this bumper sticker. I used to have superhuman powers, but my therapist took them all away. And isn't it true? We are born with these incredible gifts, these incredible powers. And what happens? We run into parents and teachers and schoolyard bullies. Talk to any little kid and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what do they say? I want to sit in a boring cubicle doing spreadsheets until some Friday afternoon I get laid off. What do little kids think they can be when they grow up? In the world of public speaking, this is what's known as audience participation. What do kids think they can be? President, any astronaut, Superman. And then they stuff us into suits and ties, or pantyhose, which I hear are worse. And we get serious. Oh, I'm dead serious about this. And you know what? If you're dead serious long enough, you end up seriously dead, don't you? And it's worse in healthcare than almost other than mortgage banking. We all know people who are deader than cut grass. They just haven't stopped breathing so we can bury them legally, you know? It's just... Sally and I, my wife and I, recently were in the market for a second home, and these were our only two criteria. We wanted a spectacular backyard, but we wanted no maintenance. We found it. That is my second home. It's a tent in the Grand Canyon. Can you imagine a more spectacular backyard? And not only is there no maintenance, maintenance would be illegal. So I want to show you a picture of the place where we lived for the past 20 years, a place we raised our kids, a place with a lot of memories. This picture was taken a little over 2 weeks ago. It is an amazing thing to stand close to a house that is doing this. Now, you're probably thinking a lot of things that are wrong. And I want to share a couple lessons from those two pictures. One, what you think you really want, sometimes just getting outside of that box, that paradigm, and looking at it in a completely different way. See, when I said we wanted a spectacular backyard with no maintenance, I know some of you were thinking, well, that means a big expensive house, not a 2.5-pound tent that you can, with no taxes, no mortgage, no utilities. So sometimes just getting out of your box and thinking in a new way. So how do we achieve the goal in a different way than what we're planning to do now? Opens up all kinds of new possibilities for you. And I'll tell you, I would much rather have a tent that I can carry in a backpack anywhere I want to in the Grand Canyon with a $5 a night permit than have to maintain a condo in Scottsdale. And for me, that's just looking at it in a different way. Second lesson, things aren't always what they seem. When I showed you a picture of that house burning down, the reason our house burned down is because we built, after 20 years of dreaming about it, we built our dream house on our little farmstead, and our conditions with the county were that we had to tear down the old house. And the third lesson, sometimes you have to be willing to get rid of it. I mean, we could, ideally, we'd have said, well, we'd like to keep that house. You know, maybe my daughter, who's a graduate student in Iowa City, could move in. And they said, no. So you got to be willing to let go of the old stuff if you're going to move ahead and grow and develop. And the last is when they told us we had to tear it down, I thought, what a waste, what a shame. So we donated it to the fire department. And that's why it was burning down. For 3 months, they did drills in that house. And then one day, we sold tickets. And one day they burned it down. It was a big event. You know, they set up a tent and everything. So there's always a way to take a negative and turn it into a positive. There's always a way to create that ultimate win-win situation. So here are our goals, my goals anyway, and I hope you share them for today. If you're a rhinoceros and you want to become a unicorn, you got to have goals. Oh, and you got to work on them too. First, between now and 9:45, I'm going to share with you some of the things that we're working on the invisible architecture of your organization, your core values, the culture of your organization, the attitude in the workplace. And then between 10 and 11, we're going to be more interactive, although I'm a little concerned because you failed the first test on audience participation. But maybe it's just not enough coffee yet. But I'm going to challenge you to be thinking about what we call the blueprint behind the blueprint of Select Medical. The foundation of core values, the superstructure of corporate culture, the interior finishing of attitude in the workplace, and obviously we're using a construction metaphor for that. Now I know this is me and you, this is me preaching to the choir. And in what I do, I find that I do this a lot. Anytime somebody says, you know who really needs this values thing? And I know they're going to go either to Detroit or Washington, D.C., and, you know, the people who really need this, they never call us. If we call them, they don't return the call. I find myself constantly talking to people like you, people who are already very successful, people who are very clear about what their values are, at least implicitly. So I'm not telling you that you got a big problem here. I don't think you do. But the people I talk to never do. The people we tend to work with tend to be at the top of their game, and they know the only way to stay at the top of the game. In fact, somebody that you know said something about this. You never get to a place where you can rest on your laurels. Rocky, is that right? Because if you do, it's all downhill from there, right? Exactly. By the way, I hope all of you you've all read this book, right? Yeah, Rocky, we may want to have a talk with this group. It's a pretty good book. You ought to read it. And what you need to have, this is, again, I love the Grand Canyon. It's my favorite place in the world. But it's a beautiful metaphor because that canyon, the river that created that canyon, has this incredible sense of urgency. You can feel it at the rapids. And much of the canyon was gouged out during big, enormous flash floods, but it has taken millions of years. And that's what you got to have. You got to have that sense of urgency of a house on fire. But you also have to know that it's going to take a long time. If you want to build a company that's going to last 100 years, you're going to have to stay with it. You're going to have commitment. You're going to have patience because it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to continue changing. Now, I am often referred to as a motivational speaker. I'm your motivational speaker this morning. Is it working? You know, and I know and you know that is an oxymoron. You don't speak motivation into another person any more than these cheerleaders are going to win the game for the team. You know, that's got to come. All I can do, I can knock on the door. I can say, here's some tools that work. If you use them, I can give you the treadmill, but I can't make you get on it and walk. All I can do is open the door. But I can give you homework. And this is Sparky. Sparky the goat. My daughter brought home a pregnant goat one year, and Sparky was eating my books. And so at your table, I'm not going to go through all of this, but here's some of the things that if what I say today interests you, if it makes sense and you want more, there's a book called Never Fear, Never Quit, and a workbook called Everyday Courage for Extraordinary Times. And they're ebooks, and you can download them at no cost at the website that's at the bottom. More than anything today, what we need is the courage to make decisions, the courage of our convictions, the courage to stay the course, and perseverance. You know, fear is a reaction, courage is a decision, and perseverance is making that decision every day, day after day. The heart and soul of what we do at Values Coach, which I'm not going to get into in any detail today, is that course on the 12 core action values. But there's a 400-page workbook. It's an ebook, and that also is at that site. You are welcome to download it, share it with anybody who you think could benefit from it. I am going to talk about the Pickle Challenge and the Self-Empowerment Pledge today. And you have these books, All Hands on Deck and the Florence Prescription, which are both about how do you build a culture of ownership. The Florence Prescription describes 8 essential qualities that you must have to have that sort of a culture. And All Hands on Deck looks at 9 organizations that legendarily built such cultures, the way Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard did, or Mary Kay Ash, or Ray Kroc, people who built companies that 50 years later are still setting the pace. So let's talk about the healthcare crisis. We've been hearing about this for a long time. When did it begin? You know, the audience participation thing, should we do a quick seminar on how this works? Did it begin with the Affordable Care Act? Does it go back to HMOs and DRGs, the Balanced Budget Amendment? Is it back before that? Is it Medicare, Medicaid back in the 60s? Is that what started the healthcare crisis? Social Security? Anyone old enough to remember the 30s? My vote would be November of 1854, the day Florence Nightingale walked into the Scutari Barrack Hospital, and it was literally hell on earth. She wrote home and said, surely this is the kingdom of hell. The mortality rate was in excess of 50%. Medical care was virtually non-existent. The place was filthy, dirty, rampant with infection. I'm certain the first 2 words out of her mouth when she walked into this pigsty was healthcare crisis. And instead of throwing up her hands like so many people in healthcare have done today, woe is us, this is so horrible, she rolled up her sleeves and she went to work. And in the next 2 years, that incredible woman, more than anybody else, defined what it means to be a nurse and established nursing as a legitimate profession. How many nurses in the room? Happy Nurses Week, and thank you for what you do. How many hospital administrators in the room? We're always outnumbered. She was also, more than anybody, Florence Nightingale was the first professional hospital administrator, and she defined that role. She, more than anybody, created a blueprint for the modern hospital in a 2-year period. You know who the first person ever to calculate and then reduce cost per patient day was? Florence Nightingale. And more than anybody, in the midst of this healthcare crisis of the Crimean War, she created, more than anybody, the healthcare system that we work in today. When will it end, the healthcare crisis? When will it end? So is it the best of times or the worst of times? Yes, the answer is yes. I just learned this yesterday. It's called the Thomas Doctrine. And it was written in 1928 when they said men and not men and women. But if somebody defines a situation as being real, then it will create real consequences. If you're in a hotel room in Newark, New Jersey, as I was not too long ago, and you're walking out to walk 3 blocks away to go to a restaurant, and the person, the concierge says, oh, you can't walk, it's too dangerous, and you stay there, it doesn't matter if there's muggers and crooks out there or not. Your reaction to that fear has created a consequence every bit as real as if they were really out there. And you know, the way we choose to interpret the world we see has a huge impact on how we think, on the decisions we make, and on the actions that we take. So I love the river, and I'd like to take you on another boat trip. Take you on a rafting trip with me. Imagine we are out with Outward Bound on this river trip, and it has been a lovely, glorious day. We've been out on the river all day. The water is flowing fast and smooth. We stop on this white sandy beach for lunch. Our guide comes around, are you having fun? Oh yeah, this is great. He says, well, don't get too comfortable because we have a big adventure coming up for you shortly. We don't think too much of it until we get back in the raft, and he comes around, he yanks on our life jackets and our helmets to make sure they're on securely. We get back out on the water, and it's going faster and faster, rougher and rougher, and suddenly we drop down into this maelstrom of white water. And our guide there on the back of the boat hollers out, "Hang on, folks, this is it. The Class 5 rapids I've been telling you about all day long. Everybody grab a paddle, dig in, and paddle for your life." And that guy in the middle there in the pink helmet says, "I don't paddle. That's not my job." What do? Throw him out of the boat. That's right. When you are in Class 5 rapids, I don't care what your name tag says, what your job description is. It is your job to pick up a paddle and do what you can. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in, whether it's the best of the times or the worst of the times, we're in turbulent waters today in healthcare. This is Class 5 rapids, and it's going to be for some time. And this is you in that little boat there. Your boat is bigger than some, but it is still a little boat in a big world. And you cannot afford people like this, waiting for someone else to pick up the bucket. Anytime you see somebody walk down the halls of a clinic, a hospital, a long-term care facility, and not stoop down to pick up a piece of paper, say, "I don't do housekeeping, that's not my job." Anytime you see somebody walk by somebody who's sitting in a wheelchair in tears, and their first reaction is, "Where's the nurse? Where's the therapist?" and not, "How can I help?" and they keep walking, that person is renting a spot on the organization chart. They are not taking ownership for the work. And there are way too many renters in our country today. Last year, I got asked to speak at the Arizona Hospital Association's conference, and this was their theme, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. And of course, it refers to the story of Aaron Ralston. Young man, he's out in Canyonlands hiking in this narrow slot canyon. Big boulder falls down, lands on his arm, and traps him there for 5 days. And how does he finally escape? Cuts off his own arm with what? A rusty pocket knife. Tell me, is this a happy theme for a conference? And yeah, well, of course. He said, for us it was. So where was I? Sometimes audience participation is like I ask the question, you answer. So there were all of these long faces. You know, we're stuck between Medicare and Medicaid and healthcare reform. It was really sad. And I had to point out to him, the story has a happy ending, doesn't it? Against all odds, Aaron Ralston escaped with his life. That's a happy ending after 5 days of being trapped under a rock. Because of the kind of magic that you guys do every single day. They gave him a brand new arm, they got him back in shape, and now he's doing all the things he used to do and more. That's a happy ending. He wrote a book and it became a movie, and now he's rich and famous. That's a happy ending. Oh, and guess what? While he was down there trapped under that rock for 5 days, he had a lot of time to think, didn't he? He had a lot of time to look in that metaphorical mirror, and he didn't like some of what he saw looking back at him. He had a lot of time to ask, why am I down here all alone and nobody knows I'm here? Well, there's nobody in my life important enough. I've pushed everybody away, including his ex-girlfriend, who didn't even know he was down there, who is now, by the way, his wife and the mother of his kids. That's a happy ending. But why was it a happy ending? What did not happen during those 5 days that allowed there to be a happy ending at the end? He didn't give up. He never quit. And there are an awful lot of people in healthcare who emotionally they've given up. Spiritually they've given up. Oh, this is so hard. Where's the time? Obamacare is going to kill us. They're not seeing. You've heard that too? This is the Chinese symbol for crisis. It has two ideograms. One means danger, the other means opportunity. You want opportunity, it's going to come with risk. So let me do another river trip, another boat trip here. Imagine you are the captain of this beautiful galley ship, and it is your job to get it across the water on time, on budget, with cargo intact, and you got 100 people at the oars. And of those 100 people, 25 of them have put their backs into the work and they're giving it their all because they have bought into the values and the vision and the mission, and they are on the team. 60 of those rowers are just going through the motions. Ho hum, another day, another dollar. Work sucks and then you die. And 15 of those rowers are actually rowing backwards, doing everything they can to get in the way of the hard workers, calling them nasty names like overachiever. Why is that a put down? Overachiever, what's wrong with that? Would you be proud to be captain of that ship? Rocky, Bob, in this room I was hoping for a more emphatic response to that question. Would you be proud to be captain of a ship like that? No. How would you feel if you were one of the 25%ers really working hard, really bought in? How would you feel about the 60%ers coasting on your effort and the 15%ers who are actually making your work harder and making you miserable with their negative attitude about it? Would you be happy about that? What would you think of the leadership of a boat who tolerated a situation where 60% of the workers got to coast and 15% were actually impeding the progress of the boat and making your job harder? Would you be happy with them? That is, unfortunately, a picture of the typical American organization in which about 25% of people are engaged in the work. 60% of people are not engaged. That doesn't mean they're doing a bad job, necessarily, but all they're doing is the job. Don't ask them to pick up an oar in the middle of the rapids. Don't ask them to stoop down and pick up a piece of paper. They're renting a spot on the organization chart. And 15% of people are aggressively disengaged with the work. Now, there is obviously a huge range. Some companies, Southwest Airlines comes to mind, is probably high 90% people engaged. And if you're not engaged, you get ejected like a mismatched organ that's been transplanted into a body. And then there are other organizations, Detroit in the 70s, it was probably the exact reverse, where line workers were actually deliberately sabotaging cars. So there's a huge range, and the question is, where do you fall on that continuum? Those highly engaged people, we call them spark plugs because that's what they do. And then you have the zombies. And then you have the vampires. And you know how you recognize a vampire in an organization? You walk in the break room and there they are, hanging from the ceiling. And you know who they most want to reach and suck the life out of? Well, everybody, but they have a special favored target. The spark plugs is their second favorite target. No. Oh, they love the non-engaged. Actually, they tend to have domineering personalities, and so they make it appear that the non-engaged people is a much bigger and less engaged group than it really is. Have you seen the movie The Wizard of Oz? And remember the scene where Dorothy throws water on the Wicked Witch and she's melting, and all the soldiers are saying, "You killed her," and Dorothy's saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." And then what do the soldiers do? They start singing what? Ding dong, the witch is dead. This is such a great metaphor for what happens in so many organizations, because leaders don't have the courage to confront these toxic, negative people, don't have the courage to send them to work for the competition, and they think they're so popular, they think, well, we can't fire that nurse because the doctors all love her. And what happens when you finally drum up the courage to confront the person, and even though they may sue you or whatever, you send them off to work for brand X, what do other people say? That's right. What took you so long? Ding dong. So you know who these people most want to reach, and this is really important for you as leaders to know? The brand new people. This is why you hear things in healthcare like nurses eat their young. I mean, what a horrific metaphor, but it's true. And these are the people. When you bring new people in, you got to protect them from these people. And some of these people, we have seen many examples of. The reason these people are so toxic, so negative, is they're miserable. And if you can get them to live their values, if you can get them to make changes in their lives, sometimes they become your best supporters. But if they won't get on the boat, they need to be encouraged to work for Brand X. And so a question that I would challenge you with is, in your facility, what does the attitude bell curve look like? Are you a normal distribution, which is not, I mean, if only 25% of your people are spark plugs, that's a problem. Even more important question is, what does the management bell curve look like? And if it's the same as the population at large, you have a big problem. If it's worse, and in some places it is, where the managers actually have more negative attitudes than the housekeepers, we've seen it, then you have a real problem. Jim Clifton, the head of Gallup, recently wrote this book. It's really an alarming book, but he's saying things demographers have been saying for a long time. We are heading into the mother of all staffing shortages as the baby boomers retire and the next generational cohort is not big enough. And in his book, he says a disengaged worker, especially a manager, is a defect. Every bit as much as giving the wrong medication to a patient, every bit as much as programming a computer with the wrong code. If you have disengaged people in your organization, that is a quality defect. And if you fix that defect, satisfaction goes up, quality goes up. Disengagement has a negative impact on everything you do. And there are people who have this sort of attitude, poor me. Obviously, it affects clinical quality. You're not providing optimal clinical quality if you have people who are not engaged. For one thing, disengaged people don't go home at the end of the day and read professional journals. They go home and watch reality TV. Oh, that's what life's all about, eh? Patient safety obviously suffers. The number one cause of accidents is carelessness. And what causes carelessness? Not paying attention, not being engaged in the work. Disengaged people. Actually, a colleague of mine just recently shared a study. Disengaged people are this is not a typo, 1,000% more likely to have a safety-related mishap than people who are engaged in their work. Patient satisfaction obviously suffers. You cannot be a negative, bitter, cynical, sarcastic pickle sucker in the break room and then go interact with a patient and somehow flip a switch, and patients can see right through that fraud. Employee morale suffers. If one toxic negative person, one emotional vampire, walking into a room, it's like one person lighting a cigarette. They immediately pollute the lungs of everybody who's in there, and they bring everybody down. Productivity obviously suffers. The more negative your workplace, the less productive you're going to be. Your marketing image suffers. You can spend $100 million on billboards and radio ads, and all it takes is for one employee to say, well, I'd never let my family go there for care, and be overheard saying that in the grocery store, and it wipes out all the money that you have spent. And paradoxically, if all that stuff happens, the one thing that people are most worried about, patients start going away, revenue goes down, job security is threatened. All of that stuff is bad, but in my opinion, the real tragedy is the impact on the disengaged person, him or herself. If you're going through life on autopilot, or worse yet, with the attitude that life sucks and then you die, what a waste. Edward Hallowell is a leading psychiatrist, and he wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review, and he said this is really an alarming statement. He said, being disengaged from your work is the number one cause of people not achieving their own personal goals. And it's true. Think of the people who are the most disengaged, the most negative people. I'll bet you anything. They're also the people that are over their heads in debt, their finances are out of control, their relationships aren't working, they're not happy at home. And Hallowell is saying, well, there's a cause and effect relationship here. He's also saying that being disengaged from your work is a leading cause of depression. And I know something about most hospitals that most hospital executives don't even know. The number one medication being prescribed for hospital employees through hospital employee health programs is, what do you think? Antidepressants. Now, what's wrong with this picture? I come to you for health care and you're all depressed. And what Hallowell is saying, and he's not someone who's opposed to medication when it's appropriate, but what he's saying is that a lot of the things that we're trying to medicate away our unhappiness, and if we would just engage in the work, a lot of that would go away. If all of us had the attitude of Les Brown, the motivational speaker, he says, every morning I get up and look around my body. If I don't see a chalk line, I know it's going to be a great day. This is a CEO in training. So you're the first to see the results of this, and we're actually still collecting data. But I asked the question of the readers of my Sparkplug newsletter. And by the way, if you want to get that, give me a card or go to joetai.com and just enter your email address. So far, we've had almost 800 people respond, and the results are truly appalling. I asked 2 questions. Question number 1, in your organization, and about half of our readers, maybe a little more are healthcare and the other half from all over the place, what percent of people in your organization are spark plugs, are highly engaged with these percentage ranges? This is the result. 47% say less than 1 out of 4 of my coworkers are engaged in the work. That's an appalling statistic. Second one's even more appalling. I asked, what percent of all paid hours get wasted on bitching, moaning, whining, and complaining, the other BMW club, gossiping, other forms of toxic emotional negativity? Look at those 2 bottom bars. 82% say that it's more than 10% of all paid hours get wasted on toxic emotional negativity, gossiping, whining, complaining. And of those, almost half of the total, 44%, say it's more than 20% of all paid hours. We did an observational study in one hospital, 3,000 employees, and we had our spark plugs, that's what we call people who go through our course on values, do an observation. They just tracked every time they observed an incident of toxic emotional negativity, 3,000 employees. From that, we extrapolated how many times a year do you have bitch sessions, gossip sessions, and how long does each one last? I once had somebody say, in our place, it's about 8 hours. How many incidents of toxic emotional negativity in 1 year in a hospital of 3,000 employees would you guess there were? Courage, folks. Take a guess. A million? Huh? 100? What planet are you from? 3,000 employees, 365 days in a year. How many bitch, moan, whine, gossip, passive-aggressive, finger-pointing, rumor-mongering sessions do they have? 10 million. And you know, you look at it, you say, that's not possible, and you calculate it out, that's 1.1 per person per day, or per hour. And when you spend time in the typical organization, that makes sense. About once an hour, somebody's complaining, gossiping, whining. And if you could just convert that into positive energy, I mean, the things you're talking about, you know, patient engagement, employee engagement, all of this stuff just detracts from that. This is absolutely the reverse of what the curve should be. It should look, those bars should be absolutely reversed. More spark plugs, less toxic emotional negativity. And our readers, almost by definition, they're highly motivated people. So I know what you're thinking. Well, that doesn't apply to us. I've read your employee engagement scores. I know you're off the charts. I know you're outstanding. I know as a profession, people in rehab tend to be more positive than other areas. At least that's my subjective impression. I also know that all the research shows that the higher you are on the organization chart, the rosier your glasses, and the less likely you are to really try to dig beneath all of that data and understand what's really going on. So I would challenge you to not make the assumption that you don't have a problem here. And as Jim Clifton, who wrote that book, said, if we could double the number of spark plug people, and this is not a bit, it's going from 25 to 50%, half of us still aren't engaged, we would eliminate every problem in this country. I think he's right. And what if you could double the number of highly engaged spark plug people in your organization? You'd go off the charts in a lot of respects. One of the tools that we share is this passion performance matrix. You know, up at the, you go to a sporting event and you yell and cheer, but you're not affecting the outcome. It's low performance. Watching sitcoms on TV, I hope that doesn't get you all fired up. It's low passion and low performance. This is the hard one, doing your taxes. You better do a good job of it, but most people aren't passionate about it. And the sweet spot is that quadrant 4, doing something you love. We call that lower right quadrant the Sarah Rutledge quadrant. In the book you have, The Florence Prescription, there is a nurse named Sarah, and she is the nurse who's got excellent clinical skills and a toxic negative attitude. And because it's fiction and I can make anything I want happen, by the end of the book she realizes what a drag she is and she changes her attitude. And we have seen so many incidents of people actually doing that. This is Cynthia Pearsall. She is the Chief Nursing Officer of Fairfield Medical Center in Lancaster, Ohio. She called me about 2 years ago, all excited. She said, Joe, we had a Sarah sighting in our hospital today. I said, what? We have a nurse just like Sarah Rutledge. She is the nurse you want to have in labor and delivery and a tough delivery. She's that good, but you don't want to be around her any other time. She's just so negative. And she came in about a month ago with a smile on her face, went right to work. She's been a different person ever since. And this morning, I finally had a chance to talk to her one-on-one and ask her, what have you been smoking? And she said, well, I read that Florence book you gave everybody, and my God, I saw that Sarah Rutledge character, and I thought, is that what people see when they look at me? And I'm not proud of that, and I realized it was, and I decided to change. Last year, a little over a year ago now, I ran into Mina Ubing. Mina is the CEO of Fairfield Medical Center. We're at a conference somewhere, we're talking. She said, we're up to 8 of them. I said, 8 what? She said, well, Sarah sightings. They're tracking it like a quality measure. And last year, I finally got to visit Fairfield Medical Center, and I met C.C. Peters, the original Sarah sighting. She confirmed everything that they had said. She gave me permission to share her story. And I asked her, I said, was it hard work going from being a negative to being a positive person? What do you think she said? Hardest work I've ever done. She said, every morning I stand in front of the mirror and I go, I sit in the parking lot and I remind myself I will not allow anybody else to steal the joy of this day from me with their negativity. And when it starts, I walk away. She said, I lost some friends. At least I thought they were friends. Now I realize they were bitch buddies. And as soon as I stopped wanting to be part of it, they didn't want anything to do with me. And what do you think was the word she used to describe the change in her? You know, this audience participation thing, I mean, I would expect this with mortgage bankers, but you guys, you're healthcare professionals. What was the word she used to describe the change in her? Life-changing, transforming. Those are true. That's not what she called it. That's true. What? What do you guys do every single day for your patients? Now I'm starting to hear the word. Miracle. You help make miracles, and that's the word she used to describe the change. Because it wasn't just in her work life, it affected everything. It affected her family life. It affected everything. When she was able to flip that inner switch, she called that a miracle. See, I am not a motivational speaker. I'm a miracle speaker. And that gets me to this journey we're challenging everyone to make from accountability, which is important, but not enough. You break that word accountable down and you get able to be counted. And the most important things cannot be counted. Accountability is doing what you're supposed to do because somebody is looking over your shoulder, holding your feet to the fire. Doesn't that sound like fun? It is extrinsically imposed motivation. And the truth is you can't hold people accountable for the things that really matter. How do you hold somebody accountable for caring, for enthusiasm, for pride? Nobody ever changes the oil in a rental car. You return it full of gas because that's in your contract. So here's a question for you. Do your people own the work, or are they just renting a spot on the organization chart? Is this what your HR department looks like? You know, jobs for rent? Or are you bringing people in with the expectation that they're going to think and act like partners in the enterprise and not just hired hands renting a spot on the org chart? Ownership is doing what needs to be done, whether or not it's in your job description. It is intrinsic motivation. When you have a culture of ownership, everybody has the same job description. First and foremost, the salesperson, last but not least, the janitor, and in between, anything else that needs to be done. Have you seen this video, United Breaks Guitars? It's on YouTube. You really got to see it. This guy is Dave Carroll. He is the lead singer for a band called the Sons of Maxwell from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And they were on their way to play a concert in Nebraska, and they stop at O'Hare. He looks out the window of the plane, and the baggage handlers are throwing their gear around. He goes up to the flight attendant. They're going to break something. Can you get them to be careful? And she says, I don't do bags. That's not my job. They get to Omaha. He opens a case of his Taylor guitar, and it's been broken. $1,200 worth of damage. He writes United. You broke my guitar. You owe me $1,200. They write back and say no. They go back and forth for 9 months. Finally, he gets the final no from Miss Earlwig at United. And he says, fine. If you don't reimburse me for the guitar you broke, I'm going to write a song about you. And they said, you go right ahead. As of late last night, 19,734,525 people. Oh, wait, it gets better. 80,000 people have rated United Breaks Guitars versions 1, 2, and 3. 5 out of 5 stars. More than 50,000 people have posted their own comments on YouTube, most of which begin with the 2 words, United sucks. The Taylor Guitar Company did their own video, how to pack up your Taylor guitar so United won't break it. How do you spell public relations black eye? When I sent the manuscript for All Hands on Deck to my editor at Wiley, I mentioned this. She called me up and said, we have not gotten a book in the last 18 months that doesn't talk about United Breaks guitars. It's legendary as a case study on how not to do it. And what would it have taken to make this not happen? One person. And it doesn't matter who, does it? A clerk, a flight attendant. If Dave had thought one person in that company cared enough to pick up the gloves and fight for him, he never would have written the song. If he had written it anyway, and the first 50 postings had been United employees apologizing, United employees saying, I wish I'd have been on that plane because I'd have fixed it. United employees saying, don't despair. I just sent an email to the CEO of the company, and I'm going to send it every single day until you get paid. I just sent an email to our training department and said, how can we let this happen? How do we make sure this never happens again? If the first 50 responses had been United employees taking ownership, the next 49,000 responses never would have happened. It would have been a non-event, the way Domino's handled their particularly nasty YouTube experience. And you know who the real losers are? The good people who work at United. I fly United all the time. I love them. They've never killed me in a plane crash. I'm very thankful for that. They always get me where I want to go bag and tow, and if I'm nice to them first, it does not matter what's going on, what crisis is out there, they're always nice to me. See, the problem at United is not the people. United does not have broken people. United has wonderful people. United has a broken culture, which is why they got taken over by Continental, Little Continental. Because it's not because of the people, it's because of the culture. So I'm going to show you a quick video here. And I'm going to ask you 2 questions. And that's the first question. Who owns left field? I'll ask you the second one after Tracy plays the video. Okay.
3 balls and a strike to count to Brent Johnson. 1 out, top of the 7th inning. Fresno 2, Tacoma 1. Santos in a jam. Johnson his first year at AAA. From the set he deals. That swung on and driven deep down the left field line toward the corner. And this ball is going to be... Oh, it's caught! It's not Jake Wald. That's the ball girl. Jake Wald in left field, can't believe it. And look, she shows him up. She just sort of tosses him the ball, saying, take that, Jake. I don't see you making the effort. Alfonso, the catcher, he can't believe it. Let's look at that replay. Oh, my. What an amazing play. And now look at her sitting there saying, no big deal, like nothing.
So who owns left field, Jake or the ball girl? Yeah, Jake's got a job description. Holding down the day, and I can't catch that one. The ball girl's on a mission. Jake, if you're not going to make the effort, get out of my way. Second question. If I come to Select Medical for care or bring my family or Michelle, my co-worker, who you guys have volunteered. Did you volunteer to take care of her? Does that mean I don't have to pay for it? What sort of attitude do you want me to see? Jake or the ball girl? See, I don't know what you're doing to me. I really don't. You stick a needle in my arm, you tell me to do something with my leg. I don't know if you're giving me quality care. I really don't. But I do know how you made me feel. That's the one thing that I can judge very quickly as a dumb consumer. How did you make me feel? Like Jake or the ball girl. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to rewire or rethink the wiring of the organizational brain. Dan Pink wrote a book called A Whole New Mind. And he talked about the change from the information age where information was power, but now information, anybody can get anything they want. Now he says we're in the conceptual age, and it's moving from left brain to right brain. You know that dichotomy? What's left brain? There's a hint up here. Left brain is the bean counter. It's linear. If A, then B. It's logical. It's executing. It's process. Right brain is emotional. It's the poet. It's the lover. It's the creative part of the brain. Management is left brain. James McGregor Burns wrote the Pulitzer Prize-winning book Leadership, and he talked about transactional leadership. That's management. That's left brain. And transformational leadership. That's changing people. That's right brain stuff. And in today's world, we need leadership in every corner, not just in the corner office. So let's look at this a little more deeply. Left brain is transactions. It is running the business. Right brain is transforming people. It's helping people look in the mirror and see who they could be if they really lived up to their potential. Left brain is rules. Right brain is values. When people buy into a common set of values, you don't need to have a lot of rules. Left brain is process. You can hardwire process. Right brain is attitude. That's got to be soft-wired into the culture. Left brain creates plans. Every organization has a strategic plan, much of which never gets accomplished. And David Maister, the consultant, wrote a book explaining why, called Strategy and the Fat Smoker. He says, we all know what the strategy is. Quit smoking and lose weight. Serve your customers really well. Do it efficiently. We know the strategy. The challenge is getting people to take ownership for their part of the strategy. And that's what leadership is really all about. It's creating that sense of ownership. Left brain can be measured, but you can't see it. If the bottom line walked in the back of the room right now, what would it look like? I mean, that's a nonsense. It's a statistical abstraction. What does productivity look like? You can't see things you can measure. Right brain stuff cannot be measured. How do you measure pride? How do you count enthusiasm? But you can sure see it, can't you? We have all had the experience. You walk into a patient care unit or into a department store and somebody comes up, can I help you? I have the time. And you know that somewhere, some manager has a checklist. Customer service training. They all got the script and the happy face pin. Check. And what that manager is measuring is completely different than what I am seeing and experiencing. And we need new ways to assess the things that can't be counted. Left brain is inert. You cannot catch accounting. I have tried. Right brain is more contagious than flu bug in a kindergarten class. We've all had the experience of some toxic person walking into the room and sucking the life right out of it. Left brain is what you do. If I move into a new community and I need an insurance agent, I'll go to the Yellow Pages or Google or talk to a neighbor. But 3 years down the road, I'm not with the same agent because they happen to sell insurance. I'm with them because I know, like, trust, and respect them. I'm with them because of who they are, and I'll pay a premium if I know, like, and trust, and respect who they are. And finally, you show me an organization that's all left brain, I'll show you boring. All right brain is chaos. So it's not either or, it's how do we bring the two together? This is left brain on steroids. Our employees are our greatest asset. I say we sell them. Now, I mentioned earlier, we all make assumptions. And one of the things that I would really challenge you to do is to think about some of the assumptions you're making personally as well as organizationally, because the assumptions we make about ourselves, about what our limitations are, about how the world works, about other people, can really put us into a limiting box. And what happens when you take the word assume and break it down? What do you get? Both of us, that's right. So I'm going to show you another video here. There is an assumption being made. What is the assumption and what are the consequences? Tracy, you're on.
Here we are, together all alone, in the still of the night, and baby, all I know, my poor heart skips a beat next to me in the still of the night. Well, here we are, just you and me like this, with every sweet caress and with every tender kiss.
When I walk into any one of your facilities, my first impression is the physical facility, but that's not what I'm going to take home. That's not what I'm going to talk to neighbors or friends about. If I'm in a clinic for 3 hours or in a patient bed for 3 days and someone says, "What's it like?" I'm not going to say, "Oh, what a wonderful place. You should see the carpet and the wallpaper. Wow." You know, what am I going to talk about? How you made me feel. A little over a year ago, I was in Glen Rose, Texas, little hospital. I walk in at 6:30 in the morning. I'm not a morning person. One of the reasons I'm a recovering hospital administrator is 7 o'clock meetings. I don't have very many anymore. 6:30 in the morning, I'm walking in with my bags. I blink hard. It's a beautiful lobby. Stone wall, fireplace, fish tank. Lady behind the counter says, "Good morning, can I help you?" And I blink again. I say, "Well, yeah, I'm looking for the conference room." And she's, "You're Mr. Ty, our speaker today, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." She comes around from behind the counter. "We are so happy to have you here. Why, we have been looking forward to this." She takes my hand in both of hers and shakes it, and she says, "Can I get you something to drink?" And I blinked again. I said, "Well, sure, I'd love a Miller Lite." And without missing a beat, she pats my hand and she says, "Well, darling, I'll see what I can do." Now, what am I going to remember about my first experience at Glen Rose Medical Center? The fish tank and the fireplace, or the fact that Marie, when's the last time you remembered the name of a receptionist over a year later and told a lot of people about it? Made me feel welcome and special. That is the invisible architecture. It's the blueprint behind the blueprint. You would not so much as remodel a bathroom without a blueprint that says where every switch is going to be. And yet something as important as how Marie makes me feel when I walk in, we allow that to evolve haphazardly, without thought, without plan. And that's what I'm challenging you to do, is to think about the blueprint behind that blueprint, the invisible architecture of your organization, because it's the soul of the organization, the way bricks and mortar are the body. And we use a construction metaphor at Values Coach. The foundation is values, your core values. The superstructure is the culture of your organization. And then the interior finishing is the attitude in the workplace. When you build a building, if you have a good architect and a good builder, it's seamless. You don't see where one ends and where the foundation ends and the walls begin. Same thing here. The values flow into the culture and create expectations about attitude in the workplace. Between 10 and 11, you will have a copy of this, and I'm going to challenge you to be thinking about how do we put on paper what our invisible architectural blueprint is. So the first step is laying down a foundation of core values. That is the foundation. Your core values define what you stand for and what you won't stand for. And like the old country song says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So what are the core values of Select Medical? Without looking at the little card on your table, how many can tell me from memory the 5 values of Select Medical? Are we done? Question we get asked all the time is, do we really need to expect that our people know them? My answer to that is absolutely. And not just managers, everybody, every single person, all 30,000 of you should know by heart what the core values are. If they're important enough to write down as core values, then you should expect every employee to know them by heart, to know why they were selected, why others that might have been included weren't selected, and most important, what does it mean in terms of your expectations of me? If you have a core value of integrity, but your culture tolerates 2 people talking about a coworker behind his or her back, you're not serious about integrity. When you do not create that expectation, you are making a really bad assumption about your people. You're assuming either they don't care enough to learn or they're not smart enough. And we hear that. Well, you know, we got to have a cute little acronym with only three words because our people are too stupid to learn 6 or 7. And you want to go, if 5-year-old kids can be expected to learn the Pledge of Allegiance, why can't you expect every one of your employees to know those 5 values or whatever it ends up being? And for all of you who didn't raise your hand, I have 2 words for you. And I'm very serious about that. If I were on the board of a hospital and I were talking to somebody whose title included the word chief, and I said, so remind me again what our values are, and they didn't know, I'd wonder, if you don't know, how do we make sure that new employees coming in know? Or how do I make sure that you're not humiliated by having some new employee say, remind me what our values are, and you say, I don't know, and you've got the word chief in your title? How can I be sure, if you don't know what the values are, how can I be sure that you're making sure that those values are being lived out in the way we care for our patients? And the answer is, I probably can't. One of the tools that we use at Values Coach is the Values, Behaviors, Outcomes Continuum. So a lot of the things you see in a statement of values really aren't values. They're behaviors, they're outcomes. Trust, for example, is not a value, it's an outcome, isn't it? You earn trust. And what are the behaviors that earn trust? Well, honesty. If you're not telling me the truth, I won't trust you. Reliability. I think humility. You don't trust arrogant people. So let's look at, since you don't, well, this will be a refresher course for you guys. Let's look at your values, and I've summarized them here. The first is superior quality. That's a very important value for a healthcare organization. Is that a value, a behavior, or an outcome? The audience participation thing, yeah, it's an outcome, isn't it? Respectful treatment, value, behavior, or outcome. That's a behavior, I agree with that. Results focus, value, behavior, or outcome. Now you could say it's a behavior that creates the results, that sort of straddles that behavior's outcomes. Being a team player, values, behavior, or outcome. Resourcefulness, value, behavior, or outcome. So let's see, we've covered all 5 of them, and how many values do we have so far? There's not 0, right? The backup switch doesn't work. There we go. There's nothing wrong with that if you understand your 5 values are not values, they are for the most part behaviors and outcomes. And the question is, what value, what personal value will inspire our people to behave in a way that gives us these outcomes? When people get clear about a common set of values, you don't need to have a lot of rules. I said that earlier. This is the Nordstrom department store. They are famous for customer service excellence. This is their entire HR policy manual. It has 2 sentences. In every situation, use your best judgment. There will be no additional rules. And the reason they can have that short a policy manual is their people are very clear about what their values are. And nobody does it better, and I really wish I was about to show you a healthcare organization here, but I'm not. It's a shoe store. Anybody here shop at Zappos? Oh yeah, I hear this all the time, and nobody ever has a bad experience at Zappos. That's their CEO, Tony Hsieh. He says, we don't sell shoes, we deliver happiness. This company went from startup to $8 billion in less than 10 years. Selling the same shoes you can buy at Target or Walmart. So it's not the product they're selling. They have 10, count them 10 core values at Zappos. They expect every employee to know by heart all 10, and they do. If you go to their website, it's front and center on their website, on their recruiting page, what their values are and their employees talking about those values. Look at number 3, create fun and a little weirdness. They didn't have a consultant write that for them. And number 1 is to deliver wow through service. And what they say is, here's what it means. This is from their website. We want you as our employee to give our customers an experience that gives them a story that they'll tell everybody they know for the rest of their lives. This is a company selling shoes. One of the ways they create that outcome is in their call center. Most call centers have a big clock on the wall and a computer program that tracks how many calls you make. At Zappos, they say, spend as much time as you want on any call, talk about anything you want to. The record is 8 1/4 hours on one call. It's true. I remind you, this is a company selling shoes. People call them up for psychotherapy. The most significant business failures are not strategic, they're values, aren't they? Every single one of these high profile, very prominent business failures from the last 10 years or so, every single one of them is ethics related, values related. And at a personal level, how do you go from being one of the most admired people in America to being one of the most despised overnight? You go on Oprah and admit, I cheated and I lied. We disrespect people because of values violations. And this is a really important point, because in your statement of values, it is organizational values are the underpinning of strategy, I hope. You know, when you talk about team play, resourcefulness, that should create your strategies, but it's personal values that create culture. One of the tools that we share with people, and I took the liberty of doing this for you, and it's in your packet, I believe, we take our course on personal values down one side of a matrix, and then our client organizations' organizational values across the top, and we ask people to think about the interdigitation of the two. People don't, Kouzes and Posner, who wrote the book The Leadership Challenge, say the more clear people are about their personal values, the more consistently they will take ownership for the values of their organization. Now, when enough people get clear about and act upon values, that foundation, they have an impact on the superstructure, the corporate culture of the organization. It's the personality, it's the character of your organization. Every organization has a culture. The question is it haphazard, or did you create a deliberate plan for how you foster that culture? The Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, character is destiny. For the organization, more than anything, culture is destiny. Enron was not doomed by failed strategies. Enron was doomed by a fatally flawed culture. So, let's say you're going out to dinner, you're going to take some friends out. They've never been to either of the diners you're thinking of, but you've been to both of them. Which one are you going to choose? This one? Or that one? Same food, same prices. Which one are you going to choose? And this really is not a trick question. This is the competitive reality today. You know, everybody's meeting the threshold when it comes to quality of service and quality of products. That's not enough anymore. I wish I could tell you this was a hospital, but where is it? Texas Roadhouse, fastest growing steakhouse chain in the country. I was talking to the senior HR executive at Texas Roadhouse. Here's what he told me. He said, we cannot compete with Outback and Lone Star based on food and service. He said, don't get me wrong, we have excellent food and excellent service, but we shop them and we know they do too. We also know that's irrelevant. What's relevant is what determines whether somebody comes back and recommends a restaurant is if they had fun. And the only way we can make sure that our customers have fun is to make sure our employees have fun. So they do pep rallies like this every shift. Any of you fly Southwest Airlines? Any of you fly United? The experience could not be any more different, could it? On United, they put you to sleep during the pre-flight. But if you got David Holmes doing a rap song on one Southwest flight, just to make sure people are paying attention, the flight attendant starts out by saying, and ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that today we have a very special passenger on board. John Taylor is with us, and it's his birthday. He is 89 years old today. And you know what he told me when he came on the plane this morning? This is the first time in his entire life he has ever been on a jet airplane. So, folks, on your way out, please stick your head in the cockpit and say happy birthday to your pilot. Now, if the pre-flight is introduced with that, are you going to pay attention? You've heard Culture Eats Strategy for Lunch. There are several articles in your handout packet that I wrote for one of the American Hospital Association publications arguing this. But the first guy ever to say it was Peter Drucker. And he wasn't wrong on very much, if anything. So the question is, you have a strategic plan. I know, I've seen it. But do you have a culture plan? And if culture really does eat strategy for lunch, shouldn't you? I don't have proof of this, but I'm pretty sure this is true. Your bottom line next year will be determined by your strategies of this year. 3 or 4 years from now, your your strategies today are much less influential on your future bottom line than what your culture is today. Eric Flamholz did one of the only studies on the economic impact of culture, and this is something that is really important for an organization like you, because he took an organization that had been built over years by bringing together through acquisitions, and they had lots of different it was like a patchwork quilt, and they defined through an exercise like what we're going to do from 10 to 11, they define what they want their culture to be. And he studied them, and he found a direct dose-response, straight-line relationship between how effectively a division implemented that cultural expectation and what their bottom line was. And he concluded that 46% of earnings before interest and taxes could be attributed to the culture, and the rest was strategy. So why does culture eat strategy for lunch? Here are 10 reasons. 1, people are not loyal to strategies. They're loyal to culture. Southwest Airlines has the highest loyalty in the industry, but they are not loyal to fuel price hedging and free bag strategies. They're loyal to a culture that lets them be authentic, that honors their individuality, that lets them have fun, and that honestly and authentically talks about love. Culture gives you resilience in tough times, and we're all going to have them. Starbucks nearly went down the tubes in 2008. And they fired the CEO, brought back in founder Howard Schultz. This is the most impressive corporate turnaround I think I've ever seen, because they're selling a highly discretionary product at a highly inflationary price in a very tough economy, and yet in the midst of all that, they saved the company, and they're doing very well now. And Howard Schultz wrote an article in HBR, and he said, the things that saved the company were our core values, our culture, and the trust that we've built in the workplace. Without using the words invisible architecture, that's what he was talking about. Reason number 3, culture is more efficient than strategy. Nordstrom has the highest customer service you can ask for, but there are thousands of stories of, the Nordstrom employee who delivers a suit to you at your home because you got a wedding tomorrow. That's not a strategy. They don't have a rule for that. That's because people have bought into the culture. They're part of it. They're thinking like owners. Culture can create an incredible competitive distinction in a market where all the products are the same. Anybody here from the Pacific Northwest? Seattle, Portland? If I had people from Seattle or Portland and I say, where do you buy tires? They would all say Les Schwab. And I'd say, well, why Les Schwab? They're selling the same tires you can buy anywhere else. They don't have a proprietary brand. But when you pull into the parking lot, the tire technician runs out to your car. Hey, welcome to Les Schwab. How you doing? What can we do for you today? That's it. Les Schwab built an empire of tire stores. Les Schwab built an entire tire empire of people on fire to sell you a tire. On the foundation of culture. They're selling the same tires, and he knows that. The only way he could Now, if I pull into one of your facilities and somebody in a white lab coat comes running out to my car, I'm going to turn around and drive the other way. You're going to have to do something different. Zappos CEO Tony Hsieh, in his book Delivering Happiness, which you ought to read, said, your culture is your brand. You can tell people what your brand is with billboards and all that stuff, but it's really your culture that defines your brand. The founder of Geek Squad, before Best Buy bought them and ruined them, but the founder of Geek Squad said, advertising is a tax you pay for not having a remarkable culture. Reason number 5, you can have a contrarian business strategy and make it possible with culture. Tom Shoes, Tom Shoes? For every pair of shoes you buy, they give one away to some kid in a third world country. Now, when I was at the Stanford Business School, had I written a case study proposing a business where for every pair of shoes we sell, we're going to give one away, I'd have flunked out. And yet, this is an excerpt from an article in Glamour magazine in which celebrities are encouraging people to go barefoot as a way of selling Tom shoes. You cannot buy advertising like that. You earn advertising like that with culture. If you have a brittle culture, it can doom an organization or a product. And this is actually a very sad time. I know many of you were tear-filled the day of the funeral. Probably, I think it was the most viewed funeral since Princess Diana, the day the Twinkie was buried. And to this day, people are arguing about who really killed the Twinkie. The union says it was greedy management. Management says it was greedy unions. And the truth is it was a culture of hostess. They had a culture of management, union hostility. They had a culture where nobody was willing to step back, where everybody was in what's in it for me mode. Nobody was thinking like a partner. Nobody, even the managers, were not thinking like owners. And it was that culture that killed Hostess as a company. Number 7, when strategy and culture collide, culture always wins. Home Depot hired Robert Nardelli, hotshot out of General Electric, to be CEO. And he came in, he imposed all sorts of GE strategies. They fired a bunch of long-term, knowledgeable Home Depot employees, replaced them with short-term part-timers who didn't know what they were talking about. They centralized all of their purchasing decisions, violating 2 of Home Depot's core values: respect for people and entrepreneurial thinking. They made a lot of money. Sales went up, profits went up, stock price more than doubled, but he wrecked the culture. And when you have your own employees picketing, calling you names like this, you have a problem. And the board finally fired him. And they've been trying to turn around the company, not with strategies, but to remember the culture that the 2 founders brought to that company. As we've seen, cultural miscues can be far more damaging than strategic miscues. Within a week of this video premiering and more than 1 million people seeing it, United stock price fell by 10%, $180 million. That's like they cheated their shareholders out of $180 million. Not to mention the way it damaged their already troubled reputation for bad customer service. Anybody can steal your strategies, they can recruit away your best people, but nobody can copy your culture. Everybody has tried to copy Southwest Airlines strategies at one time or another, and they all failed. You don't see TED Airlines anymore. Every single day, 100 people go through Zappos. Nobody will ever duplicate Zappos culture. That's the one sustainable source of competitive advantage that has a barrier to entry this high. And finally, if you have a great culture, it is the ultimate in risk prevention. Walmart has a culture of low price at any cost. And their culture has gotten them in a whole lot of trouble. Most recently, the Mexican bribery scandal, which turns out to be a global bribery scandal. This is a headline from Forbes magazine. Now, Forbes is not a socialist publication. It is the capitalist tool. And the author is saying he's predicting that the world's largest corporation will fail, not because of Amazon.com, which is formidable competition, but because every 2 or 3 years, with almost clockwork reliability, you read about another huge ethical scandal at Walmart. They have spent over $100 million investigating these bribery scandals. Money right out of the pockets of customers, shareholders, employees. And they're the butt of jokes of cartoonists everywhere. Every one of these cartoons is a poking fun at Walmart. Sam Walton, bless his heart, would be rolling over in his grave to see what they have done to the values that he brought to that original company in their pursuit of strategies of low price. And this is a really key point for you guys. Here, we worked, our biggest client for a number of years was a Fortune 500 insurance company called Auto Owners. Nobody's ever heard of them because they only market through their independent reps they're loyal to. They have 10 core values, expect every one of their 3,600 associates to know by heart all 10, and they do. I've asked more than 400 people over the years. You could blindfold me, put me on an airplane, turn me around in circles, walk me into an office in which all the signs had been removed, and I could tell you within 10 minutes or less, I'm in an auto owner's office. Just by the way people treat each other, by the way they talk, by the culture that you can feel. It is a tangible, visceral feeling you get in a very positive way. And that's a question I'd have for you. Is that would you like me to be able to walk into any select medical facility, no matter what the brand is, and say, wow, there's something special about this place. I can't see any signs or anything, but there's something about the culture in this place that it's like flying Southwest Airlines. I know before the plane even takes off, I know I'm on something special here. Is that something you would like? The enthusiasm, it just sort of... If your answer is yes, you must not allow a culture of optionality, and we see it all the time. well, we're going to do this, but if you don't want to buy in, that's okay. If you want to be a 60%er, we're okay with that. If you want to be a 15%er, well, just, don't get in the way too much. You cannot allow a culture of optionality for two reasons. One, the people most likely to opt out are the ones who are already most damaging to your culture. And they're going to be the ones outside throwing rocks. And two, if there's a training component to it, and there should be, the people who could most benefit, people like C.C. Peters, the people who could most benefit, those are the ones who are going to opt out. And they're going to criticize something they don't even know about. And if you do not allow it to be optional, to be a part of this culture, to go through whatever training is involved in building that culture, you're much more likely to make it happen. And the truth is, they're almost always the same people opting out. And everyone knows who they are. We have something going on in Wyoming. We work with 2 critical access hospitals, one on either side of the state. They have challenged each other on culture and values. They're writing new value statements, they're creating culture plans, and they're competing. We have an independent review panel of nationally recognized authorities, and we're making it fun. Charlie Button and his team at Star Valley near Jackson, and then Ryan Smith and his team in Douglas on the other side of the state. We are evaluating their plans, their culture, their values plans on 4 criteria. 1, the quality and creativity of the plan itself. What are you doing that's really knock your socks off exciting? 2, how comprehensive and committed are you and your people to implementing the plan? What are you going to do to make sure that you don't have a culture of optionality, for example? 3, what results do you get? What sort of participation are you getting? Not just people in the hospital, but reaching out and getting the community involved in it, because they should be thinking like owners of their hospital. And then we're looking at objective criteria, patient satisfaction, employee engagement, but also subjective things like what sort of stories are you collecting? And it can be fun. It doesn't have to be a program or an initiative. Now, culture doesn't change unless people do, and that is emotional work. That's the attitude in the workplace. The interior finishing. You've heard that attitude is everything. That's almost true. It won't make you a great brain surgeon, but bad attitude will make you a bad brain surgeon. And in a world where only 25% of people are engaged in the work, including hospitals, on average, think of the competitive advantage you can create if you have 50% or 75% of your people thinking and acting like spark plugs. And enthusiasm really is the master value. Ralph Waldo Emerson said nothing great was ever achieved without it, and he's right. Core action value number 10 that we've been working on this morning. These are some of the spark plugs from our group at the Alaska VA Medical Center in Anchorage. And to show their enthusiasm, I challenged them to reach out beyond the walls of the hospital. They adopted the local homeless shelter, called up the director and said, "We've adopted you. What do you need? We want to help." And he said, "Well, we can get people to donate most everything, clothes and food and such, but nobody wants to donate toilet paper. It's just not sexy." And so they launched Operation Wipeout. Did you see the movie Cool Hand Luke? Paul Newman's greatest role? And there's so many important lessons in that movie, and the most important of all is this one. These guys are out there on the chain gang. They are miserable, hot, grimy work, shoveling hot asphalt on this gravel road. Boss man in the mirrored sunglasses keeps hollering, "Hurry up, boys, get to work, get this road done." And they're grunting and straining, and Cool Hand Luke says, "Boss man wants speed, boys. Come on, let's give him speed." He hollers, "Yeah!" Starts shoveling like crazy. Dragline says, "Come on, boys, we got to keep up with Luke." Now they're all working like crazy. They get the road done 2 hours ahead of schedule. 2 hours before the trucks are going to come take them back to the prison work farm where they have more work to do. And they're huffing and puffing, hanging on their shovels. Young guy says to Luke, "What do we do now, Luke?" Luke smiles, looks back, looks up at the sun. Nothing. And what just happened there? Number one, did you have an active leadership? Sure. Who gave Luke permission to be the leader? He did. Most important 3 words in the book, The Florence Prescription: proceed until apprehended. If you proceed fast enough, by the time they figure it out, it's too late. But something even more important happened here, didn't it? 1 minute, you had 30 guys doing awful, miserable work, and they were miserable. 30 seconds later, they were playing a game. The work did not change, did it? In fact, the work got harder because they were working harder. What changed? Their attitude about the work. That's the only thing. What would happen to the health care crisis in America if 4.5 million people made that transition from it's just a job to I love what I'm doing, I'm playing a game, but I'm moving pretty fast. Try to keep up with me if you can. And a toxic or a positive workplace begins with intolerance for toxic emotional negativity. The climate in your workplace will be defined by what you say you expect. You know, those little cards I see on the tables. And what you tolerate, and over time what you tolerate will dominate what you say you expect. You say, we expect integrity, but your culture tolerates two people talking about somebody behind their back, and you have just lowered the bar. You say, we expect excellent customer service, but you tolerate people in the break room whining and complaining. You have just lowered the bar. And unfortunately, speaking of culture at a global level, we are swimming against a very strong cultural current. This is, I don't watch TV, but this is a comedian named Louis C.K. on the left and one of the late night talk show hosts on the right. And this guy captures what's wrong with America. And I'll make a comment on it afterward, but this is called Everything's Amazing and Nobody's Happy. Okay, Tracy.
Back then, yeah.
Those were simpler times, I think. I just feel like we may be going back to that, by the way. But in a way, good, because when I read things like the foundations of capitalism are shattering, I'm like, maybe we need that. Maybe we need some time where we're walking around with a donkey with pots clanging on the sides.
You think that would just bring us back to reality?
Yeah, because everything is amazing right now, and nobody's happy. Like, in my lifetime, the changes in the world have been incredible. When I was a kid, we had a rotary phone. We had a phone that you had to stand next to, and you had to dial it.
Yes.
You realize how primitive? You're making sparks in a phone, and you actually would hate people with zeros in their numbers because it was more like, oh, this guy's got 2 zeros. Screw that guy. Why do I want to? And then if they called and you weren't home, the phone would just ring lonely by itself. And then if you wanted money, you had to go in the bank for when it was open for like 3 hours. You had to stand in line, write yourself a check like an idiot. And then when you ran out of money, you just go, well, I can't do any more things now.
That's right.
I can't do any more things.
That's it, yeah.
That was it. And even if you had a credit card, the guy would go, ugh, and he'd bring out this whole shunk, and he'd write, cut. He'd have to call the president to see if you had any money. And
it's all true, kids. You had to call the president, yeah. It was ridiculous.
Yes.
Do you feel that we now, in the 21st century, we take technology for granted?
Well, yeah, because now we live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots that don't care, because this is what people are like now. They got their phone, and they're like, ugh. It won't. Give it a second. It's going to space. Can you give it a second to get back from space? Is the speed of light too slow? Yeah. I was on an airplane, and there was internet, high-speed internet on the airplane. That's the newest thing that I know exists. And I'm sitting on the plane, and they go, open up your laptop. You can go on the internet. And it's fast, and I'm watching YouTube clips. I'm in an airplane. And then it breaks down, and they apologize. The internet's not working. The guy next to me goes, this is bull. Like how quickly the world owes him something he knew existed only 10 seconds ago.
Right.
And on planes, flying is the worst one because people come back from flights and they tell you their story. And it's like a horror story. They act like their flight was like a cattle car in the 40s in Germany. That's how bad they make it sound.
Right.
They're like, it was the worst day of my life. First of all, we didn't board for 20 minutes. Right. And then we get on the plane, and they made us sit there on the runway for 40 minutes. We had to sit there. Oh, really? What happened next? Did you fly through the air incredibly like a bird? Did you partake in the miracle of human flight, you non-contributing zero? That you got to fly? You're flying! It's amazing. Everybody on every plane should just constantly be going, oh my God! Wow!
Yeah.
You're flying. You're sitting in a chair in the sky.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Now, Louis.
But it doesn't go back a lot. And it's
Shares
not
a
really. You know, here's the thing. People, like, they say there's delays on flights.
Yeah.
Delays, really? New York to California in 5 hours. That used to take 30 years to do that. And a bunch of you would die on the way there and have a baby. You'd be a whole different group of people by the time you got there. Now you watch a movie and you take a dump and you're home.
Yeah, nicer way to say it than that, but yeah.
Of all the things that I teach and share, I try to do them all, but this simple little promise, which is in the Florence prescription book, a little laminated card, has been for me personally and for a lot of the people we work with more life-changing than anything. And it simply says, I will turn every complaint, my head is killing me, into a blessing. Thank God for modern pharmacology. Or a constructive suggestion. First symptom of dehydration is a headache. I should drink some water. I had to park 6 blocks and walk all the way to the mall. Thank God you have legs. As you know, there are a lot of people who would give anything to have those aching feet. Thank God you have a mall and you don't live in Haiti or Somalia. Oh, and by the way, if you put down the donut and went to the gym, maybe walking 6 blocks wouldn't be such a pain. There's nothing that can happen to you if you have that perspective that you can't turn into a blessing and an action step. And this pickle challenge we have been giving people has just taken on a life of its own. We're seeing people bring in pickle jars, and when you bitch, moan, whine, complain, you get fined. Put a quarter in the jar. One day a guy came in and said, I know it's going to be a shitty day. Here's $1. I'm paying in advance. We're seeing people put up signs like these, declaring their workspace a pickle-free zone, like we used to do, you know, declare your workspace a smoke-free zone. I don't want to hear it. Leave your complaining and whining at the door. Take it to the employee health program. They get paid to hear it. I don't. We're seeing singing pickles, dancing pickles. That's Becky Caldwell. Becky is at a hospital in Nebraska. Becky is 6'4". When she puts that costume on, she's 12 feet tall. And she goes around delivering pickle pops and singing a song, reminding people what a blessing it is to do what we do and to stop whining and complaining about it and just do the work. We're seeing people like at Alverno Clinical Labs in Indiana posting bulletin boards asking people to make the commitment by signing the board. At a health system in Arkansas, I met Mr. Pickle. He is a 3.5-foot tall piñata. And he travels around the health system, and when you get him, you get to dress him up any way you want to. As a reminder, when you come in, leave your pickles at the door. I was so impressed, I commissioned the artist to make Mr. Pickle Jr., and he's now in our office reminding us to count our blessings and to do the work. At one of the hospitals in the Wyoming Challenge, they're gathering every day in their lobby to remind each other, to turn every complaint into a blessing, stop whining and complaining. And remember the graph I showed that 80% of people in our survey think that at least 10%, and half of them think more than 20% of all paid hours get wasted on this kind of toxic emotional negativity. So it's a huge potential impact on your organization. They had a pickle jar decorating contest. The little guy on the red brick won. This is, I got this email a few days ago. There's a hospital in Iowa, in Davenport. They were so impressed with Mr. Pickle, they're making their own, but he's 6 feet tall. And when you walk in the door, there he's going to be, reminding you to leave your complaints, your pickles, out in the parking lot. And tomorrow I'm headed to the VA Medical Center in Battle Creek, Michigan. That is the largest provider of mental health services for veterans in the country. And somehow they found out about this. I've never been there before, but they found out. We have done a lot of work with Vision 20 in the Pacific Northwest. And they have been sharing this with veterans. And they had a pickle party. They brought in a cake with a pickle on it. They put the pickle up on the wall. And here's what they're learning. And this is an amazing finding that has huge implications, I believe, for you and the work you do. Because if they can get veterans to start to set aside that poor me victim thinking, to turn complaints into blessings, to find the silver linings, to have my dear friend Michael Crosby is a Capuchin monk, and he wrote a book called Thank God Ahead of Time. Nothing bad can happen to you if your attitude is thank you. You know, Christopher Reeve, when he said being paralyzed is something I'm glad, he said he wouldn't do it over again. Any of you know W. Mitchell? Mitchell is an amazing guy. He was run over, and he was riding his motorcycle. He was run over, the cap popped off. He became a human torch. It burned off his face and his hands. He went through years of rehab in San Francisco, finally got out of rehab, moved to Eagle Grove, Colorado to rebuild his life. He started a company, Vermont Castings. They make fireplaces. He said, if you're going to have a fire, confine it. He bought an airplane with special controls he could fly because he doesn't have fingers anymore. And his plane crashed on takeoff one day, and his back was broken, and now he's paralyzed. And he was in rehab and feeling sorry for himself. Who wouldn't? And he got a call one day from a therapist from the hospital in San Francisco. And she said, Mitchell, you used to always tell us, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. Do you still believe that? And he said the truth was he didn't. And he said that call was a wake-up call for me. It was like the 2x4 on the side of the head. And he wrote a book called It's Not What Happens to You, It's What You Do About It. Now he travels all around the world in his wheelchair as a speaker. Very, very successful, but he's touched a lot of lives. And he will tell you what so many, and I know you've heard this because I hear it from people all the time, but I asked him, if you could go back and undo the fire and the plane crash and have your body back, but be the person you would have been had it never happened, would you do it? What do you think his answer was? Think of that. His answer was no, I would never, I'd love to have my body back, but I would never give up who I am. I would never give up the people I've met. And if we could just get people like the veterans who are struggling with PTSD, which, by the way, I've learned is not a stress disorder, it's an identity disorder. It's a disorder of values. And that's what they're finding. That's why I'm going to Battle Creek tomorrow to meet with some of these veterans. They're finding if we could just get people to think about their values and change their attitudes, change the culture that they have at home, we can have a much better impact on their physical health, on their emotional health. So we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we're here till 10:30 tonight. Is that right? When we come back, we're going to take an hour, and I'm going to challenge you to think about a couple of things. One, none of you know the 5 values of Select Medical, or at least you didn't raise your hand. If you were starting with a clean slate of paper, what would those values be? What would be the values that would make you really proud to get up in the morning, come to work, tell people, yeah, I'm part of Select Medical, to become somebody whose job description is first and foremost a salesperson, last but not least a janitor, and in between everything else. Then I'm going to challenge you to think about what's the culture of Select Medical now and ideally, and to describe it in only 6 words. It is possible, I'll prove it. And I'm going to ask you to think about, in terms of attitude, what are some attitudes that are prevalent in the workplace now that you would discard? And what are some attitudes that you would love to see enhanced and built upon? Those 3 elements of invisible architecture, that's what I'm going to challenge you to do. And that you'll have a worksheet. I think you'll have a worksheet at each table. What I'm going to ask you to do, and we're not going to do a lot of reporting out, we just have too many people, but I'm going to ask each one of you individually to fill out your worksheet with your responses to the questions that you're going to have after some discussion at your table, and bring them up. Edwin, would you be willing to collect those? Give them to Edwin, and then they're going to have a resource to start thinking about this whole idea of invisible architecture, something that I hope will spark some of your thinking. I'll start out with a couple of introductory comments, you know, maybe 54 minutes worth. I can't even say hello in 54 minutes. So at this point, we're going to take a break. Is that right? Okay, so hang on. In my 20 years of doing this, I've called a lot of breaks. And I've learned something really important about calling a break. If you call a break from the front of the room, by the time you get to where the coffee used to be. Okay, 15 minutes. We'll see you back. Can I ask everybody just to start clapping? I used to put on big conferences, and one year we had about 500 people out on break getting coffee at the bookstore. Our next speaker was C.W. Metcalf, author of the book Lighten Up, the late C.W. Metcalf, one of the funniest speakers I've ever heard. I'm up on the stage screaming, "Get back in here, hurry up, let's go." He just looks at me and says, "Do you do everything the hard way?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to get them in here for you. What would you do?" He said, "Well, get the people in here to start clapping. Out there, they're going to think they're missing something." And it usually works. So before we get started on our interactive exercise, there is a video that I'd like to show you because there are two really important lessons from this. But I do have to warn you, it is R-rated for language. There is a cuss word in it. I hope nobody is offended. It is, I assure you, it's a cuss word you've used yourself. Maybe as recently as this morning, but it is a cuss word, so it does earn an R rating. This man is Taylor Mali. Taylor is a teacher and he's a poet. And he is performing a poem that he's written called What Teachers Make. It is the most forwarded poem on the internet. And I want to show it to you, and then I'm going to ask you two really important questions about it. So if you could start the video.
He says the problem with teachers is what's a kid going to learn from someone who decided his best option in life is to become a teacher? He reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teachers, that those who can do, and those who can't teach. I decide to bite my tongue instead of his and resist the urge to remind the other dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers. Because we're eating, after all, and this is polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher, Taylor. Be honest. What do you make? And I wish he hadn't done that. Asked me to be honest, because you see, I have a policy about honesty and ass-kicking, which is, if you ask for it, then I have to let you have it. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and I can make an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best? You want to know what I make? I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute silence. No, you cannot work in groups. No, you can't ask a question. So put your hand down. Why won't I let you go to the bathroom? Because you're bored and you don't really have to go, do you? You want to know what I make? I make parents tremble in fear when I call home at around dinner time. Hi, this is Mr. Mali. I hope I haven't called at a bad time. I just wanted to talk to you about something that your son did today. He said, "Leave the kid alone. I still cry sometimes, don't you?" And it was the noblest act of courage that I have ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they are and who they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write, and then I make them read. I make them spell definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, over and over again until they will never misspell either one of those words again. I make them show all their work in math and then hide it on their final drafts in English. I make them realize that if you've got this, then you follow this. And if somebody tries to judge you based on what you make, you give them this. Let me break it down for you. Let me break it down for you so you know what I say is true. I make a goddamn difference. Now what about you?
So a question for you. What would happen to the education crisis, and we do have an education crisis, if every teacher in America had that sort of passion for their work? What would happen to the healthcare crisis if every nurse, every doctor, every therapist, every business office clerk came into work every day with that kind of passion and commitment to the work they do? What would happen to the healthcare crisis? And literally every problem in America that ends in the word crisis, the debt crisis, the obesity crisis, it's a failure of values, bottom line. And if we just would get clear about, act upon, live our values, if we would have that kind of passion, those problems would go away. Second question. You can go on the internet and you can find Taylor Mali's poem in written form and you can read it. You can go on the internet and you can find a younger Taylor Mali standing at a podium reading his poem. How much of the impact that you just felt was the words of the poem, how much, or him reading the poem versus him acting it out and the passion he put into it? Okay, let me say it again. How much of a lot of the, yeah, what studies show is that, I'm your motivational speaker. We're going to have a lot of fun today. The most underrated leadership skill is the ability to move a room full of people, whether it's 2 people or 200 people. As a leader, you need to be able to move people to think. You need to be able to move people to act. Sometimes you move people to laugh. Sometimes you need to be able to move people to tears. And how do you do that more than anything is by stories. And one of the things that if you really want to build a great culture, one of the things you really need to think about is how do we teach people to capture, collect, and then tell those stories in a way that touches us. One of the people in this room came up to me during the break and told me a story that absolutely touched me. And it tells me an awful lot about who you are as a company. That's a one-on-one interaction that it's like Mary Ann, the person I talked to at the Zappos 800 number, Marie, the receptionist at Glen Rose Medical Center. And I'm going to remember, from my experience here, I'm going to remember the stories that you tell me probably more than anything. And it's something you should think about. How do we teach people how to give them the confidence to tell our story in a way that moves people? And so what I'd ask you to do, one more thing. I want to introduce you to somebody very important. This is Dr. Jennifer Menetrez, Colonel Menetrez, now retired. She is the founding director of the Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio, Texas. Have any of you been to CFI? This is a very high-tech medical facility that provides very intensive rehab care for the most horribly wounded veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And I have never seen more passion, compassion, pride, commitment in a medical facility than I saw in this place. First person I saw when I walked in the door was in a wheelchair. He had no arms and no legs. And he's an American hero who everybody's going to look at the rest of his life as a freak. And when Dr. Menetrez walked me around the facility, first thing she said is, you will not look at any of our soldiers. Your eyes will be straight ahead. You will not make anybody feel at all uncomfortable. I'm walking you through. We don't do tours in this place. And we walked into the prosthetics lab where they make artificial limbs. And there's a young man in there meticulously working on the toenail of an artificial foot. He was so engrossed in his work, he barely saw us come in. Finally, he looks up and he said, "Oh, hi, can I help you?" So I said, "So what are you doing there?" And he said, "Sir, the woman I'm doing this for lost both of her legs in Iraq, and she wants to wear sandals. And by God, she will have the prettiest toes in the room. And she wants to dance. And by God, I am going to work with her until she can dance like she has never danced before. So I'm going to have her dancing with the stars." And here's a young man who doesn't just have a job. Here's a young man who's got a calling. He's on a mission. Get out of his way. And again, what would happen to the healthcare crisis if all 4.5 million of us had that sort of attitude about our work? It would go away. So you have 2 documents in front of you. And this one, I'm not going to go, there are no more slides today. I'm not going to go through all of it. Some of this are worksheets for you to take back and use them as best you can. Send me an email if you'd like any advice or guidance on any of them. But the one that we're going to focus on today is this, and you have 2 copies of it. One is stapled in with the take-home worksheets, and the other is freestanding. That's the one you're going to give to Edwin at 11 o'clock, or actually at noon. Hang on to it. And after Deidre's done, give it to Edwin. And so the first question, the one I ended at before the break with, is if you were starting all over today, if we did not have the 5 values that none of you seem to know anyway, so why not? If you were starting with a fresh, clean slate of paper and saying, what are the values, what are the core values that make me proud to be a part of this organization, what would they be? And they don't have to be necessarily values. They can be behaviors like professionalism. They can be outcomes like excellence. That's fine, as long as you're clear about what they are. But what would they be? And so what I'd like to do is have you take 5 minutes at your table and talk about it, and then have each of you write down your own individual answers. And it could be 1, it could be 6, it could be 10. There's no magic number, no cookie cutter. And then we'll move to the next question about culture. So, total of 10 minutes, 5 minutes to talk and 5 minutes for you to think and write down your own responses. I'm not going to ask every table to stand up and talk about it, but maybe 1 or 2 people. What was that experience like? Okay, so we'll move. While you're thinking, I mentioned the Wyoming Culture and Values Challenge. One of the hospitals in that challenge, I had a room like this full of managers, and I asked them, what are the values of your hospital? Nobody knew. They're posted outside the room, right on the wall, and they spell out CARE, of course, compassion, accountability, respect, excellence, the usual suspects. But nobody knew. So we did this, and I only gave them 3 minutes. I said, each table come up with what would be the values that would inspire you and make you proud to be part of this hospital. 3 minutes I gave them. Each table reported out. We had somebody recording it at the front of the room. We compiled the results for the consistent themes. We came up with 5. So I had right there, I had a slide made. We put it up. I said, okay, so you got CARE, which has been posted on the wall for nobody knows how long, and none of you know it. And then we have these 5 values that you in 3 minutes came up with. Now, if you could choose one or the other, which would you choose? Which do you think they picked? It was unanimous. I'm throwing you a big puffy softball on this one. Which one do you think they picked? The new one. And that raises a really important question. If in 3 minutes at your tables you can come up with something that creates more pride and inspiration and is frankly more relevant to your operation than what's been on the wall for all those years, what if you engage your entire organization in a dialogue about who we are and what we stand for and what we won't stand for? What if you brought the community into that dialogue? And that's what they're doing now. And it's a year-long process. But so I would challenge you with that question. What you have now is really good, if you knew it. What if you started that dialogue now at Select Medical? I mean, I think you're at one of these inflection points culturally. What if you started that dialogue now? Where could it take you? And then on that foundation, you build the culture. And one of the exercises we have found that really helps clarify people's thinking is to force you to define your culture in just 6 words. And this is an idea I stole from Smith Magazine. They asked people to, on their website, write a 6-word memoir, your biography in 6 words. And the title of the book was Not Exactly What I Was Planning. And my favorite was Cursed with Cancer, Blessed with Friends. And you read that and you think, that's got to be an old soul, somebody with a lot of life experience. But it's not. It's a 10-year-old kid. And if a 10-year-old kid can say that about cancer, and they stole the idea from Hemingway. He was challenged once to write a short story in 6 words, and he did. It had a beginning, an end, a middle. It created an emotional impact. It left you with unanswered questions. That, by definition, is what a short story does. Him being Hemingway, it was a sad story, but you want to hear it anyway. For sale. Baby shoes, never worn. And that's the reaction. You know, it's just, now, it could be happy and uplifting, too. There's a comedian named Jeff Foxworthy who's made millions with 6 words. You might be a redneck if your house has wheels and your car doesn't. So my challenge to you now in this next exercise is two things. One, the current culture of Select Medical. With 30,000 employees, more than 1,000 facilities, can you even do it in 6 words? And then, what would the culture be ideally? And we're not going to have each table report out, but every time I've done it, especially with big organizations, the results are fascinating because it's the blind man and the elephant. It's very clear in most organizations that people are not clear about what the culture is. So at one table you have great people, great products, great service, which is not a statement of culture, but it implies the pride. And over there it has, this place sucks, then you quit. And everything in between. So you very obviously don't have a consistent understanding in a leadership group of what our culture should be. And the other thing it does is it begins to help you think about, well, what would our culture be? Someone once told John Kennedy when he became president, the better you are as a president, the shorter your biography will be. I mean, Lincoln's biography was one sentence, freed the slaves. 3 words. You know, Washington, father of our country. And that's what this woman who is a historian said to Kennedy. If you're a great president, you will have a very short biography. So the only organization I know that, the best organization I've known to do the 6 words, and it wasn't the exercise, but they've done it, Southwest Airlines. And their motto is servant's heart, warrior spirit, fun-loving attitude. And if you count the hyphen, that's 6 words that really does capture their culture. But if a bunch of people from Southwest Airlines were here in this room, they'd say, well, we don't need 6 words, we can do it in 1. And what would the 1 word be that more than anything captures the culture at Southwest Airlines? Fun. And anybody familiar with the company, that is the mark of a great culture. That someone can walk in the door and they can feel, whether they're in Poughkeepsie or Phoenix or wherever, they can feel there's something special going on here. That's the mark of a great culture. And so I'm going to challenge you now to do those 2 6-word statements. 1, what's the current culture? And 2, what would our ideal culture be? And then each person write down your own thoughts to give to Edwin at noon. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes for this one. How hard was this? Yeah, well, it should be hard, shouldn't it? And, you know, in many respects, for an organization like yours, culture is sort of like a patchwork quilt. And the question is, do you take all these disparate pieces of fabric and weave them together into something that is beautiful and functional, or is it just lots of different pieces of fabric that are sort of thrown together? And great organizations, even though they're spread across the country or around the world, you know, if you read the book All Hands on Deck, and I hope you do, Thomas Watson Sr., when he built IBM, he's the first person to really understand that culture is a source of competitive advantage that you use strategically. So what thoughts or observations on this particular exercise? That would be you. No, stand up.
Our group talked, you know, coming together, we're representing a lot of different divisions and a lot of people that we may not have bumped into one another professionally, and we owe it to ourselves to walk away with a commitment to work together division to division versus just talking about doing it. So when we're talking about our culture, we came up with some words of collaborating, so commit to collaborate, and then a bridge to grow. So taking the company forward as far as not just taking an individual division one way without regard to the other division. So I think in the healthcare crisis we talked about it, you know, post-acute continuum, you have to kind of grow as one as opposed to a fractured unit, and that's what's going to build strength as a company.
Okay. You know, and I'd really have to agree if a year from now you look back on today and say, you know, on this day we started a dialogue in this company that really helped us get clear about who we are, what we stand for, what we won't stand for, what our culture is. To not do that would really be, I think, a waste of this opportunity and this experience. So let's go to the last set of questions. What are, at each table, define a couple of things that you absolutely are going to expect of each other, and define some of your zero tolerance behaviors. And this is such an important thing, to define zero tolerance behaviors, because many times we say, well, this, you know, we don't allow dishonesty, but then we look the other way at people talking about someone behind their back, which is an inherently dishonest practice. And when you get clear about what your zero tolerance behaviors are, you raise the bar on attitudes in the workplace. So take our last 10 minutes together and come up with 3 or 4 of each: behavioral expectations and zero tolerance behaviors. Typically, this is an easier exercise identifying specific expectations or things you're not going to be tolerant of. It's also, sometimes you identify the elephant in the room, you know, the things that we've all been sort of looking the other way at. Let me wrap up with a story about vision, because I hope what you're really going to walk away from here today is a vision for the kind of culture that you want to have. And I heard about a guy who had a vision. This was his dream. It's a simple dream. Us guys can relate to it. But his dream was a brand new Porsche 911 Carrera GT. He wanted this car so bad he went down to the bookstore. He bought a whole stack of car magazines, started bringing them home and cutting out pictures, putting them up everywhere, at work, at home, his locker in the gym. He even put one up on the bathroom mirror. Well, his wife comes walking in. Honey, this is a bathroom, not a garage. Does your silly car even have to be in here? And he says, well, yeah, you bet. Every morning when I shave, I look at that picture and I say, there she is, my car. She just rolls her eyes. You've been listening to those motivational tapes again, haven't you? 2 years later, the man pulls into the driveway and he honks the horn and guns the engine of his Porsche 911 Carrera GT, and he hollers out, hey, honey, come on down, let's go for a ride. She looks out the window. My goodness, I guess that stuff must really work. And they go out for a nice long ride through the countryside. Well, next morning, the man comes down. He goes in the bathroom. And there on his wife's side of the mirror is a picture of Brad Pitt. And there's a really important lesson there, that you got to know what you want. So when I wrote the book All Hands on Deck, for a while it was in airport bookstores. And one day the CEO of the Porsche Car Company of North America bought one, took it back. This is a true story. Called our office. Joe, I enjoyed your book, and I would love to have you come out and spend a day with our leadership team here in Atlanta. I said, well, that sounds like fun. I'd love to do it. So we talked about topics, figured that out, looked at calendars, got a date figured out, got all the details worked out, and finally he says, so, what's this going to cost me? I said, you know, here at Values Coach, we are big fans of barter. I'll tell you what. I'll give you a full day of my time, all expenses covered, all the books you can read, all the note-taking handouts you can fill up with notes. You give me a Porsche 911 Carrera GT, you got more than you can count anyway, you'll never miss one, and we'll call it a wash. Now, you never know if you don't ask. You know, you got to know what you want. There's 2 things that you really need to take home with you. One, the more clear it is about what you want, the more likely it is you're going to make it happen. But then you're going to have to be willing to ask, aren't you? You're going to have to be willing to ask some people to change some of their behaviors, to change their attitudes, to think in some new ways. And you're going to have to be willing to ask audaciously, I really need you to be on this boat. And it's going to be hard work, but I need you to do it. And you just never know when the answer will be yes. I asked audaciously for what I wanted. He said yes. And I am now the proud owner of a Porsche 911 Carrera GT, and it has a racing package that you cannot get at the retail store. And I see it every morning as a reminder, sitting there on my bookshelf, that you have to be specific about what you want. Thank you all very much. It's been a delight being part of the group today. Thank you.